Indeed, in Ghana, the major problem that deaf people are facing is the issue of communication. And how is that? Once we see two deaf people communicating, throwing their hands in the air, we think or we call them that they are fighters or they are fighting. The same way here people speak is the same way deaf people communicate with their hands. So you just have to watch with their eyes because that is their culture. When a deaf person sells, has his or her personal business, whether haircut, carpentry, or whatsoever, if you visit a deaf person, if a deaf friend visits, and then maybe one goes to buy, once you see them communicating in sign language, you'll be afraid and you move away. And that will never help them to succeed. And that will cause a lot of people. So please, I am begging all of you that whatever that you see deaf people doing, that is communicating with their hands, you have to see them as important. You can just wave them, just help them. That will make them happy with no worry. If that is not done, deaf people will resort to begging, which is not good. So I want to say something small. I'm just pleading for the government of Ghana as well as the Ghana Education Service to include sign language in the curriculum. Because if that is not done, if the studies of sign language is not inculcated into the children, it will make the living of the deaf children, deaf people, very difficult. Once the child is trained in the private schools or in the government schools from the infancy, once a deaf person wants employment and goes to meet such a child, it's going to be simpler because the child will be able to communicate with a deaf person because now that he's grown. But once such a person is not fit into the deaf culture, such a person is going to reject the deaf people. So please, I'm really pleading with the government, most importantly, to include sign language in the curriculum so that will make the lives of the deaf people very easier, or else it's going to make the lives of deaf people very hard and will resort to begging, and that will make things worse for them. I'm also proposing that the curriculum should actually involve the studies of sign language. This is because once the children, especially the new generations that are coming up, once they are good with the sign language, they get themselves acquainted with the language, they will be able to transmit or transfer it to the next generation. Also, all the institutions, the educational institutions, should try their possible best to make sure that the sign language interpretation becomes something which is a must, so that once a deaf person wants to access education, to be simpler for the deaf person to do so. And also regarding technology, I will also entreat that these content creators should try their best possible to include sign language to whatever content they produce. I think once that is done, the deaf people will know whatever that is happening in our society. And then also the deaf people should be given constant training regarding technology. We have a deaf person who is into coding, but the coding the deaf person is into the person has not been identified yet. Why? Because we think they have no potential. But now the deaf has been able to develop an app that deaf people will be able to communicate with. So this means there are a lot of potentials that deaf people are having, but because we've not identified them yet, that is why we most often undermine them, or we see that there is nothing good in them. So it's about time we unearth the talent that deaf people are having.